Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a text that is just masterfully written. It weaves ancient history into this profound blueprint for our own spiritual future. We're talking about Isaiah chapter 52. Now, what's so fascinating to me about this specific chapter is how it takes the very real, very gritty historical dust of ancient oppression and literally transforms it into this radiant promise of spiritual redemption. So we're going to unpack exactly how the physical chains of Israel's past actually serve as a direct, typological mirror for our ultimate spiritual liberation. Isaiah chapter 52, verses 1 and 2 state, "Awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion. Put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem. Shake thyself from the dust. Arise and sit down, O Jerusalem. Loose thyself from the bands of thy neck, O captive daughter of Zion." You know, this isn't just some gentle nudge. It's an urgent, emotional command. Think about it. Anciently, victorious enemies would literally place their feet right on the necks of the defeated. It was a sign of utter dominance and complete humiliation. But here, captive Zion is being told by the Lord that the time has absolutely come to lay aside her garments of grief. She's commanded to shake off the literal and figurative dust of her prostrated state and rise up to a future of prosperity and holiness, where the uncircumcised and unclean will no longer conquer her. To truly grasp this transformation, we're going to take a typological journey through 5 key areas. First, awake, O captive Zion. Second, Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon. Third, bearers of good tidings. Fourth, a type of spiritual exodus. And finally, the redeeming suffering servant. Let's dive right in. Section 1. Awake, O captive Zion. Now, to really understand this redemption, we first have to understand why Israel was in captivity in the first place. Looking at the context here, Isaiah chapter 52, verse 3 states, "For thus saith the Lord, ye have sold yourselves for naught, and ye shall be redeemed without money." This points out a pretty tragic truth, doesn't it? The crucial takeaway here is that Israel wasn't just randomly conquered. They had actually sold themselves into the hands of Babylon through their own transgressions. They traded their freedom for absolutely nothing of true value. But here's the incredible promise. God declares that his hand is not shortened. He promises to redeem them without money. Historically, that meant a temporal redemption through the armies of Persia, who would eventually conquer Babylon. But spiritually, it points to a much, much greater redemption, one purchased not with silver or gold, but through his own blood. Section 2. Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon. So let's ground this in the historical context. We really need to understand the exact nature of the physical oppressors Israel faced over the centuries. Isaiah chapter 52, verses 4 and 5 indicate that this oppression wasn't just an isolated event. It was a brutal, ongoing progression. The scriptures detail that Israel went down aforetime into Egypt to sojourn there, and then the Assyrian oppressed them without cause. These sequential waves of historical dominance set the stage for the heavy Babylonian yoke that Isaiah is prophesying about. This oppression was incredibly heavy, and you've got to remember, it wasn't just political, it was deeply spiritual. Notice how these historical oppressors actually weaponized their physical dominance to disrespect God. The text tells us they made the people howl in despair, and the Lord's name was continually blasphemed every single day. And we see specific historical taunts backing this up. For instance, do you remember the Assyrian leader Rabshakeh? In 2 Kings 19, he openly mocked King Hezekiah, basically asking if the God of Jerusalem could actually deliver them, when literally no other gods had been able to stop the Assyrian war machine. Later on, during the Babylonian captivity in Daniel 5, King Belshazzar commanded that the sacred golden and silver vessels, the ones taken directly from the temple in Jerusalem, be brought out so he and his court could drink wine from them. That was a calculated sign of utter disrespect for the Lord, and it was a direct result of the Jews' iniquity. Section 3. Bearers of good tidings. Now, let's pivot the narrative a bit. Right in the midst of that dark history of howling and blasphemy, a striking image appears. Isaiah chapter 52, verses 7 and 8 state, "How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publisheth salvation, that saith unto Zion, Thy God reigneth." Imagine being a captive, right? You're in bondage, and suddenly you see a messenger sprinting across the mountains, bringing the ultimate good news. It's incredibly hopeful. What exactly are these tidings? Well, they loudly declare 2 monumental truths. Physically, that Babylon has fallen, and spiritually, that Christ has come. The watchmen lift up their voices and sing together because they finally see the Lord bringing again Zion.
And what's really amazing is how this ancient message of deliverance echoes across other scriptural texts. In the book of Revelation, chapter 14, an angel follows declaring, "Babylon is fallen, that great city," which perfectly represents the ultimate end of worldly oppression. Furthermore, if we look at the book of Mosiah, the prophet Abinadi is challenged by corrupt priests who are actively perverting the Lord's ways. And what do? They quote this exact passage from Isaiah, trying to trap Abinadi by claiming he only preaches destruction instead of these good tidings. But Abinadi powerfully uses Isaiah's true meaning to expose their wickedness. He proves that true peace and salvation only come through the Lord's righteous deliverance.
Section 4. A type of spiritual exodus. This brings us to a really fascinating concept that we can call the typological arc, where the physical history of Israel serves as a direct mirror for our own spiritual journey. Isaiah chapter 52, verses 11 and 12 state, depart ye, go ye out from thence, touch no unclean thing. Go ye out of the midst of her, be ye clean, that bear the vessels of the Lord. For ye shall not go out with haste, nor go by flight, for the Lord will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rearward." So the instruction here is to leave Babylon cleanly and in an orderly manner. Just like the ancient Israelites were guided out of Egypt by the angel of the Lord in a pillar of cloud, going before and behind them, the Jews are told to leave Babylon with purpose and purity. They don't need to flee in a chaotic panic. Why? Because the God of Israel is actively guarding both their front and their rear.
Let's explicitly map out this typology to make it crystal clear. On the historical side, this meant leaving the physical empire of Babylon in peace. This was an event facilitated temporarily by King Cyrus, who actually allowed the people to bring the physical vessels of the Lord back to Jerusalem. But on the spiritual side, it represents leaving the bondage of sin. It's the ultimate spiritual exodus. This is exactly the call in Revelation 18 to come out of her, my people. It symbolizes being cleansed by Christ's blood and knowing with absolute certainty that God is guarding your spiritual journey. The physical history is just the shadow. The spiritual escape is the ultimate reality. Let's see how this all builds to what might be the most important question of the entire chapter. Who is the suffering servant that will ultimately redeem Zion without money? I mean, we know Cyrus was a temporal deliverer, but who provides the ultimate eternal deliverance? Section 5, the redeeming suffering servant. This introduces the profound concluding prophecy of this chapter, setting the perfect stage for the deeply moving descriptions of the Messiah's sacrifice that continue right into chapter 53. The answer to our question lies in a heavy, deeply moving prophecy. Isaiah chapter 52, verses 13 and 14 state, "As many were astonished at thee, his visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. While he will ultimately be exalted and rule all nations, his earthly mission required just incomprehensible suffering." The text tells us that the heavy burden of acting as the savior for all mankind, facing the rejection of his word, the immense strain of healing, and the virtue going out of him, it took an agonizing physical toll. His mortal human frame and countenance were marred more than any other man could bear. Now, to really understand what the suffering accomplished, we need to look at a specific ancient word Isaiah uses next. That word is sprinkling. In the ancient Levitical law, specifically in Leviticus chapter 4, sprinkling was the precise priestly act used to cleanse a leper. It was a ritual of profound purification. And what's absolutely fascinating is the detail of this ancient practice. It involved taking 2 living, clean birds, along with cedarwood, scarlet thread, and hyssop, and literally sprinkling the blood and water on the person to declare them clean. Isaiah uses this incredibly vivid ancient priestly context to brilliantly illustrate how Christ's ultimate atonement purifies and cleanses those who have been spiritually unclean. He truly is the ultimate high priest. Because of this incomprehensible sacrifice, Isaiah chapter 52, verse 15 states, "So shall he sprinkle many nations. The kings shall shut their mouths at him, for that which had not been told them shall they see, and that which they had not heard shall they consider." Through his marred visage and infinite sacrifice, he will provide for the cleansing, the sprinkling of the nations. And what's the response from the world's most powerful rulers? Absolute silence. When the nations and their kings finally understand this previously unheard gospel, they won't even speak. They will be left in silent, absolute veneration, awe, and admiration, considering a salvation they had never before imagined. Ultimately, what Isaiah 52 teaches us is that the brutal physical captivities of Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon were never the end of the story. They point beautifully and directly to our desperate need for redemption.
a redemption perfectly fulfilled through the suffering, the cleansing blood, and the ultimate spiritual triumph of Jesus Christ. He's the one who commands us to awake, shake off the dust, and step into the light of his salvation. So I'll leave you with this. What dust of captivity do you need to shake off today to fully receive his cleansing? This concludes our overview.